Wild. We are going to talk about the film Ben Desoto for art's sake. We have our two directors here, Andrew Benavides, Michael Zapata. Guys, welcome to Films Gone Wild.
Hey, what's up?
Okay, and we start this off by having one of you, since we have two directors here, one of you will introduce our audience who has not yet seen the film. What is the film about? So, which one of you gets the honors here?
You go ahead, Mike.
All right, Michael, you're up.
The film is about a Houston photographer who was vital, to the city of Houston in the 80s through the 90s. He captured a lot of like important movements that are historical as far as like the music scene growing and blossoming, and just following his life, his story, his work, and then coming to retirement. A lot of the changes with photography and business, some of that stuff, a lot of the up and close personal stories that he had with different artists, and then just kind of leaving you wanting more at the end, where you see like how deep his archives run.
All right, he's kind of like in league with Henry Diltz, David Godless. It was like Henry Diltz on the West Coast, David Godless on the East Coast, and with Ben there down in Houston.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so this documentary, here's something I'm always interested in, and when documentarians work on a project, unless it's obvious from the get-go that they've got a feature-length project on their hands, oftentimes there is a decision-making process of, something, we got a 20-minute film here, or we've got a 60-minute film here, or what have you. In this case, this film is a little bit just over a half hour. So talk about that decision-making process. What from the beginning, were you targeting that, or did the kind of the evolution of the project just lend itself toward that running time?
Well, originally it was supposed to be probably in our head originally probably like 5 to 7 minute video on the photographer just for Facebook. But then after the first interview, me and Witness looked at each other and we knew that we could get more out of it, as far as like visiting him again and interviewing him again. And once I visited him again, I just threw a microphone on him and I'm like, look, take me into your world. I want this all organic. All I did was introduce myself, mic them, and said, take me into your world. And that's when he kind of took us into his room, and he let down that trunk of photos, and from there it's like, okay, this is going to be a longer piece, not necessarily an hour or two or whatever, but we knew we had more content to put out just besides that DJ Screw photo session.
Right. Okay, and also, we have a directing tandem here, and on the documentary side, when oftentimes when you have a directing tandem, sometimes it's divvied up between one guy or girl doing the interviews, one guy or girl doing the bulk of the editing. It's there's never a one size fits all as far as how those responsibilities are divvied up. So in the case of you two, how were those responsibilities divvied up?
I think I know Andrew and I just have a natural chemistry, working together. We would bounce ideas off of each other. We really like kind of went with the flow with this project. Like you said, originally it was just supposed to be like a 5-7 minute piece, which kind of turned into something else. But we just had a lot of like lessons learned going through it. Should we include this? Should we exclude that? Just kind of chopping off the fat that was unnecessary. Structuring, Andrew managed a lot of the structuring of beginning, middle, climax to the end, emotional spot, so really try to make something that we would enjoy as viewers and seeing, like even like the very tedious spacing between edits. I would be able to give Andrew some feedback on that. No, like let that breathe a little bit, let the viewer absorb what he just said, or any suggestions that Andrew had with all directions. It was kind of just in his hands, where I was kind of just giving my feedback. But I think ultimately the chemistry between us and the photographer, the subject Ben, it just worked out naturally. We played with the idea of like interviewing more people, getting more faces on board to kind of share their story about him. But I mean, working on it, just the two of us with no budget, like we knew it was going to be extra work for us. We didn't really have the budget. Let's try to stay back on focus where it's just about Ben. So there was a lot of, you know, rocks and you know, things thrown at us. But I mean, ultimately, like, you know, over and over, you know, your worst critic, you know, we finally had a piece that we felt just flowed perfectly.
Got it. And you know, when you have a subject like Ben, who he comes off, you know, in this documentary is just a very warm and kind guy. And you know, and when you have a subject like that, you know, oftentimes, you know, as documentarians, we feel like this responsibility, like not only are we telling their story, but we're also kind of taking care of them. And you know, and especially in this film, because you do have a moment, a striking moment where he really does open up as to what is driving everything that we've been watching up to that point. And it's startling how you guys deliver that news, because we haven't really been prepared for it, and it really just shocks you into a thing of like going, okay, I thought I was just going through the memories, just going through a fun, like, and a photo album, flipping through and everything. Like, no, this shit is actually much more serious than that. So, guys, both of you, talk about that. Talk about when you knew about that. You know, because of course the audience knows about it at a certain point, but how that weighed on the filming process as well.
Yeah, well, a lot of it, like, so, like I said, I would go and film Ben here and there whenever I was available, because I work out of town a lot, like filming for concerts and things like that. But one of the days that I went over and Ben got very emotional, I knew we had an ending right there. Like, I knew, like, that was the segue, like that was the transition to how we could bring in the reality of Ben's life now. You know, it was all fun and games, and it was a pure joy of seeing like the happiness, but there's also a reality that, you know, we wanted to bring up and bring out and let the audience know that, you know, he did this out of pure love. You know, there was not a lot of money involved, and at the end of the day, you know, he's seen a lot. He's seen a lot, you know, and that we didn't tap into that. We wanted to just keep it music, but there's so many other photos with homelessness and drug addiction, killings, murders, like gnarly stuff. But we just wanted to keep it on the happier end, but at the same time tie in that there is a reality to this. So that's, you want to add to that, Mike?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, we definitely saw mental illness come into play, like how things affect, you know, people differently. I never really knew what, you know, like paramedics and firefighters and people like first responders see, like, immediately, you know, going on the scene of something. And until Ben brought that up, you know, like a lot of the dark side of things that he saw, there's a you know, a post-traumatic syndrome for that as well. You know, I always associated that with, you know, veterans going to war, but it was a new perspective, like hearing him talk about that, how it affected him, you know, his childhood, growing up in poverty, you know, all those things in your developmental years play a part to who you become. And it's beautiful how you see him, you know, transition out of high school, like learning to find himself, you know, like who he's hanging around with. You know, I think that's just a beautiful part. But then the reality, like Andrew said, we all struggle with our inner, if you want to call them demons or whatever. And it was nice just for him to open up on that and share that very, you know, personal, emotional side of him.
Right. I mean, there's almost a Cameron Crowe almost famous aspect about his story, right? Where, you know, I mean, he started when he was a teenager as an intern, and you know, and then from that point on, he becomes the de facto photographer, our eyes into that rock world. I mean, that's pretty remarkable in itself.
Yeah.
All right, so then the last question again, going back to the reality of of making a film like this, what is are you guys, it seems like, you're like going, well, listen, we're going to tell a story, and however long the story it takes us to tell the damn story, that's what our film is going to be. But now you're at a point where you go, okay, we'd like people to watch the story that we told. So, so then, how do we do that? And you're kind of you're at the end of your festival tour. So where does the film go from now, so people can access it, people can find Ben's story?
We're messing with the ideas. We're talking to, like, the University of Houston, the African American Library. We're looking at really having our project live there at some kind of institution that they can utilize it for special screenings. We don't know yet if we want it to live on the internet, just to not get it tied up with any licensing or stuff moving forward, dealing with getting removed and this and that. Because I mean, we really, it was a very underground film at the end of the day, like budget wise. This wasn't like a
Right.
huge budget. So we're still kind of messing with those ideas, but I mean, people can stay informed via the Instagram when there's screenings. If other colleges or people want to host private screenings, we'll allow it. If we feel it's an appropriate fit for somebody that's really wanted to kind of get people exposed to it. So those are some of the.
So that's great. And yes, and yeah, there's no greater bane to the existence of a filmmaker than music rights. So
Yeah, they'll mute you real quick, or they'll send you a message. I've gotten plenty of them before. So that's just something that we want to put it online eventually. And I think maybe one of the ways is, instead of YouTube, maybe like Vimeo. I think they're a little more friendlier when it comes to that.
Right. All right. Well, again, the name of the film is Ben Desoto for Art's Sake. We've been talking to Andrew Benavides, Michael Zapata, the directors of the film, which is screening at the Sound Unseen Music and Film Festival. Guys, it's a fantastic watch, and great that you have not just made a cool film, but you've actually documented this key little bit of history. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. It's great talking to you guys.